Hi, I'm James McGuire, Managing Editor of Datamation, and I'm here at the Digital Identity Summit with Alisdair Faulkner, Chief Products Officer at ThreatMetrix. Alisdair, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, thank you for joining us.
And I know you are also one of the co-founders of ThreatMetrix,
That's right, yeah. David Jones was the original CEO and still on our board.
Which means you've been with the company since 2005.
For a while, yes.
For a while,
For longer than I want to remember.
You've seen some changes in the online authentication sector.
I mean, before we even started out, we started before the iPhone.
Well, okay, so nothing was before the iPhone.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and we've seen a dramatic change from people using browsers to just how the mobile has taken over the world.
Right. So I want to talk about ThreatMetrix ID. Interesting announcement this morning. But before we get to that, let's talk about the other interesting thing you do, the cybercrime report. It's quarterly. Right. And so you've seen some changes over time in how fraudsters are operating. What kind of stuff have you seen?
I mean, we've just seen greater trends towards automation. One of the things that we realized very early on with ThreatMetrix was, what happens if it's as easy for a bot to do an online credit card transaction as it is to send spam? What happens then?
Right.
What world do we live in? And the cybercrime report and ThreatMetrix in particular kind of took that notion and went, well, first part of the problem is measuring it. How extensive is it?
Right, you can't change it if you can't measure it.
Right, and what frustrated me personally is that you could get reports on how many identities have been breached, how many new viruses are out there trying to hack your system.
Right.
There was nobody telling me, or anybody, like how often our identities were being used out in the wild. So the cybercrime report really is the first and only index, if you like, talking about these public attacks and how prevalent our identities are being used on a daily basis.
Have you seen a percentage increase quarter over quarter? Like, what is it, like a gradual thing? Is it exponential?
We're seeing it slowly creep up to the right, but what's typical is fraudsters try and stay under the radar. They know that if they take all the money out of the bank, there won't be a bank tomorrow to steal from.
Right,
so
the slow and low bots.
Right, the slow and low bots or just human exploitation. But what we have seen is this dramatic spikes, these targeted attacks on a global scale, which look like state-sponsored actors, unprecedented levels of attacks.
It might be a nation state in some cases actually sponsoring this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our identities are valuable for creating, understanding valuable assets, for compromise, for blackmail, or just for funding illegal operations. Cybercrime now is a go-to place for, it used to be gun running, and probably still is. It used to be drugs, it still is. But cybercrime is so much easier. No one has to get shot at.
You sit on your couch in your pajamas.
No one has to risk getting arrested by the cops. Exactly.
Yeah. What might be one interesting fact that you've noticed over the last quarter or so?
Just really what I was saying in terms of, we monitor these identities, and like in the press there's been a lot of recent press about data breaches and things like that.
Right.
And what we're really seeing is the outcome of that is that it's not a victimless crime, is that we're seeing identities being used on an unprecedented scale. So I'm talking, some online retailers are seeing 95 to 98% of all authentication attempts is using somebody's identity.
Really?
And more often than not, they're legitimate. They're not made up.
Right. So what about ThreatMetrix ID? There was a big announcement this morning. It's an upgrade to the decisioning platform.
Right.
What sort of things are different about that?
Well, ThreatMetrix ID really moves the lowest common denominator from the device to the human being in a transaction in an anonymous way.
Okay.
It means we're way more effective in stitching together our online interactions, from online banking to e-commerce.
Right.
We do it in a way that represents that consumer anonymously and helps protect against things like people stealing your identity and then pretending to be you, where the digital ID and the ThreatMetrix ID in particular is able to say, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
This doesn't add up.
Doesn't fit the pattern.
Alisdair, exactly.
Right.
Doesn't shop at Toys R Us, on this type of device from these countries. This is unusual.
Right. Huh. Is it? It's real-time analytics, of course, which already existed.
Right.
I thought one thing you said was interesting. It was able to compare how your competitors are doing versus yourself. Was that an aspect?
Well, yeah. I mean, we introduced the ability to look at peers and analyze your attack rates versus how your competitors are being attacked.
Right.
What level of fraud or level of risk you're under versus your peers. But the other thing about ThreatMetrix ID that is absolutely unique is there are many companies that have identifiers. Pretty much credit bureaus do, right? But they're typically based on your offline data, social security numbers and others.
Gotcha.
ThreatMetrix is unique in that it represents your digital identity, your digital behaviors, combined with your offline identity in a way that's secure, private, and safe, without you needing to disclose all of who you are and what you do to whoever you want to transact with. And importantly, it's not just an identifier, it's an intelligence engine that enables you to make real-time decisions, not just at point of time, not just across the channel within an organization, but across the global things, there are global activities that your consumers do. It's the first customer-centric fraud and authentication decision tool on the planet.
Hey, Alisdair, thanks for sharing with us, and thank you very much for watching today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.